Hello, level 1 ballet dancers. This is Laura for Bellevue College's ballet class. This is for the very beginners in class to learn about the positions of the feet that we will be using in class. Now, the first few that I show you are going to be the ones we're going to use the most for the first couple of weeks. And then after that, we're going to add on the rest of those positions of the feet. Now, these are pretty universal in the way that they're used. Some people will use one version over the other, so I will show you those a couple different versions for each one. But we're going to start off really simply here. We're actually going to start in a parallel position to start. When I do some of the warm-up work, we always start in parallel first. It's very good as ballet dancers to cross-train your legs, so you're using muscles in different positions. And sometimes ballerinas are very good about only working in a turned out position. So I like to incorporate some of that into class. But this is actually a position as well too. It's actually the one with the highest number, and this is a sixth position. You'll see it a lot when people are standing and waiting for something. If you watch story ballets, you'll see that a lot of their waiting in this parallel position. If I was teaching jazz or contemporary modern, I'd call it parallel first. But again, in ballet, it's called a sixth position. So from there, we're going to work in the turned out positions. But before we do that, I'm going to demonstrate a little bit better about how we find our turnout. Now, there's a video that I will want you to have had watched before all this, and it talks a little bit about your own anatomy. And right now, I'm actually going to give another little quick demonstration of that. So this is your femur bone. So this would be your thigh bone here in that leg. This one's obviously a little bit longer than mine is. This is the ball of that femur, and this outside bone here is called your greater trochanter. And these are the two things I'm going to talk about the most. So if I was to find my hip socket's kind of in that crease where if you were wearing a pair like your underwear crease basically, in the center of that, if you go to flex your hip, you're going to kind of feel that release in there. And that is where your hip socket actually is. So it's not out on the outside. So that is where that femur, ball of the femur would fit inside of there. And then you've got your greater trochanter, which you can actually feel on the outside. When you are in parallel position, you should be able to find that greater trochanter. So when I go to rotate or externally rotate out, that is going to rotate inside of my hip socket. And this greater trochanter actually, if you could see 3D through my body or see inside of my body, it would actually rotate back towards this way inside. And so as I go to rotate my thigh out, my whole leg goes with it. So I should be able to feel my greater trochanter here in parallel. Sometimes it takes a second to find, but it's on the outside, not in the hip socket. So come out from it just a tiny bit. As I rotate out, it goes away and it comes back, and it goes away and comes out. And that's where you're finding your external rotation from. It's down the entire leg. So the entire leg is going to rotate out together. We want to be extra careful that we don't do the turnout from the knee joint or from the ankle joint, because you're going to cause a lot of stress if one is turning one way and one's turning the other way. So if my lower leg is turned one way, usually turned in, and my thigh bone is turned out, you're going to cause a lot of stress in there and wear down those ligaments a lot more quickly than you would want them to be worn out. They're a really common cause of injury, like quick twist. So we want to make sure we train from top to bottom. So with that being said, you're going to find that external rotation. One of my favorite ways to find it actually is to start in that wider parallel position. I'm going to do a little rise up, and I'm going to send my heels towards each other, and I'm going to place them down. Now I happen to be like perfectly spaced apart because I know my turnout pretty well. You might have to be farther apart or closer together because you want to end up with your heels touching my thigh bone, my knees, my ankles, toes, all pointing the same direction. So what I want to avoid is that twisting of the feet from the ankles. I have to hold onto the bar because I'm not going to be able to hold my balance. You'll notice too that my ankles start to roll in. I'm actually twisting my knee a little bit here so that even if I went to go bend my knees, my foot is going to roll in more, my ankle's going to roll in more, my knee's going to roll in more, and I'm going to cause a lot of stress there. So I want to make sure that when I go to bend or do a plie, that it all rotates out together, goes that same direction. And that's going to be your first position, and that's what you work in. Don't force it any more than that. Many of us have different levels of external rotation, and whatever you have is great. You can work on it and try to attain it to get more, but for some of us, we may have what we have, and it has to do with a lot of different reasons, which I went into in the other video that you guys have. So I'll talk about that. So if you forgot what they are, rewatch that. But there are many reasons why we have the turnout that we have and why some of us can't gain any more. So use what you got. So we've gone from 6th position or parallel first into turned out first position. Again, using my little muscles that connect to my femur bone and connect to my pelvis to help externally rotate those thighs. This is first position. If I step it out farther and a little bit wider, you've got second position. Now this one's a little bit of a debate as to how big your second position should be. Many people think that the heel should kind of be on the edge of where your hip lines are. I actually don't mind a little wider second, especially when we go into pliés. It actually feels really nice on my hips to open them up a little bit more. So they're gonna vary in size, but it's gonna be based on several different reasons. But that second position is a wider position out to the side. So that's second position. From there, third position would be next, and you can take either foot in front of the other. Usually put it in the instep of the foot. If you have elastics on your shoes like I do, and it's in the center of your foot there, that's a good place to place that foot to give you third position, and still working on both legs, equally rotating out from top to bottom. So that's third position. You also have third position with the other foot in front, so it equals both sides. And again, your turnout is gonna be what it's gonna be. You're probably gonna look up pictures and you're gonna find people that are really twisted, really flat together. And then from here, I can do it in plie, but when I go to stand up, I'm actually causing a lot of stress in my knees. So I'm not gonna choose to do that. I'm gonna choose to use the turnout that I have. So that is your third position. From there, you have fourth position. Now there are two different types of fourth positions, feet. And again, there's some debate about how you use them. I prefer what's called the open fourth. Open fourth is gonna be heel off of heel, about a foot distance apart. So if I took my other foot, my front foot, and I took my heels off of each other, I took a parallel line, and then at the end of my toes there, I put my heel in that place, that's gonna be my fourth position. It might be a little tiny bit wider than that as well too. Again, it's kind of a little bit debatable. Same thing with the second positions as to how wide you make that fourth, but it's gonna be a separated position and heel off of heel. Still finding the turnout from both those thighs. And when I go to take that bend or that plie, thighs go that direction as your toes. So this is your open fourth. Same thing could happen on the other side. Open fourth position. Again, I tend to like a little bit wider one, especially because it helps me to open up my hips a little bit more. So that's your open fourth. The other position of a fourth is called a closed fourth, and that would come from your heel off of your big toe. Now right here, while I'm here, this is your fifth position. This is the fifth position that every school of ballet uses, except for Cicchetti. I use the Cicchetti fifth, which is the heel at the big toe joint. So either I go from the big toe joint or I go from the big toe itself, the end, step out. That gives me a closed fourth position. So you have an open fourth, heel off a heel, closed fourth, heel off a big toe, close it in, big toe to the edge of the heel is your fifth position used by all schools of ballet except for Cicchetti. Cicchetti fifth is heel at the big toe joint. That's my preference. So if you're just learning, that's what I'd like you to use. Those of you who have maybe had ballet before and learned to close that fifth, feel free to do that as well too. I'm not that much of a stickler of it, especially if you have it in some muscle memory. So same thing can happen on the other side. I have my fully crossed fifth, which is my heel lined up with the end of my big toe. Then the Cicchetti fifth, which is my heel lined up with the big toe joint. Stepping out from there, the closed fourth position, heel off a heel is the open fourth position. So those are the positions you'll be seeing in class. So I'll tell you my preferences again. So parallel first, I like to call it that sometimes, but it is 6th position. First position, so externally rotated from the top of those thighs, heels are together. A bit wider is your 2nd position. Closing in one foot in front of the other in your instep is your 3rd. This is the position when we start to work crossed. It's going to be the position I would like you to work in before you start to cross it over more. So for most of us, the best place to be is going to be somewhere between the 3rd and the 5th. And it's going to depend on a lot of different anatomical factors, which I'll be talking about later. But one also includes leg length. So if I have one leg that's longer than the other, and I go to fully cross, then I start to tilt in my hips a little bit. And I still want to make sure that I keep that pelvis in that alignment when I'm in this position. So this is your 3rd. Heel off a heel, open 4th. Heel off a big toe, close 4th. Fully crossed 5th is all schools of ballet except for Cicchetti, which is your heel to the big toe joint. And then I'll change sides there, so 3rd. Then we have heel off a heel, open 4th. Heel off a big toe, close 4th. Fully closed 5th, all schools of ballet, except for Cicchetti, which is the heel at the big toe joint. So my preference is Cicchetti 5th and open 4th. And that is a quick explanation of those feet and the feet positions in ballet. So although we're talking about the feet, the energy and the musculature, all that's working your bones, everything is starting at the top of the thighs and working down. And this is where a lot of your movement is going to be coming from, all the way up inside of those hip sockets, all the way down to those thighs. Of course, with some support from your core as well. So that's your positions. Make sure you memorize those positions because you will be standing and using those positions a lot in every single class, trying to work your turnout. All right, there's the positions of the feet.